There is a rhythm to life that does not yield to pressure. Just as the tides rise and fall without our command, the soul unfolds in its own time, in its own way. To force what is not yet ripe is to destroy its chance to bloom. What is meant for you does not need to be pushed. It needs to be recognized. What you call delay, the soul calls preparation. The conscious mind, ever hungry for control, desires immediate clarity, instant results, and linear progression. But the psyche does not move in straight lines. It spirals, it sinks, it rests in the dark. Its language is not urgency, but symbolism. When something within you seems stuck, not responding, not yielding to your efforts, it may not be broken. It may simply be incubating. There are truths that cannot be grasped prematurely, wounds that cannot be healed with force, and callings that do not emerge until the soil of the self is deep enough to hold them. You may feel behind, you may feel as though others are racing past you while you wander in circles, but the inner world does not follow the clock. It follows the readiness of your being. Pushing yourself to arrive before you're ready is not growth, it's violence against your own soul. You may create surface success, but beneath it will be cracks, fractures, a hollow echo where authenticity should live. And so the true task is to stay with the silence, with the confusion, with the not knowing. To sit with the unfinished parts of you without rushing to define them, to resist the panic that tells you to move, fix, or escape. Because within that stillness, the psyche is doing its sacred work. Something is being rearranged in the depths, far from the reach of your conscious grasp, and when it is ready, truly ready, it will emerge not as something you forced into being, but as something that was always waiting to be born. The timing of your unfolding is not a flaw. It is part of the mystery that shapes all living things, just as the moon does not rush to become full. Just as the caterpillar cannot force its own transformation, you, too, are held in an unseen rhythm. One that does not betray you, but blesses you, if only you learn to trust it. When you force something, be it a relationship, a purpose, a healing, you are often not moving forward, but sideways, away from the very thing that needs to be seen. The impulse to force arises from an intolerance toward discomfort, toward uncertainty, toward that inner trembling that says something isn't yet whole. But beneath that discomfort is the shadow, the part of you exiled from your conscious identity. And the more you try to manipulate your life to avoid this encounter, the more fragmented you become. The shadow does not disappear because you ignore it. It grows more persuasive, more cunning. It disguises itself as urgency, as productivity, even as spiritual progress. It whispers, move faster, don't look back, fix it now. But this is not progress, this is escape. And each time you act on that urgency without examining its source, you reinforce the division within. You may look successful on the outside, but inwardly, you are ruled by the very forces you refuse to face. When you bypass the shadow, you bypass your wholeness. You trade temporary control for long-term distortion. You try to force love without confronting your fear of abandonment. You try to force clarity without admitting your fear of being lost. You try to force power without confronting your history of powerlessness. But the soul has integrity. It will not allow you to carry true light without first reclaiming the darkness from which that light was born. Forcing is often a defense, a way to stay busy so you don't have to feel. So you don't have to sit in the raw ache of not knowing who you are without your goals, your identities, your masks. But that ache is sacred. It is the birthplace of integration. And until you can rest inside that space without trying to escape it, you have not yet entered the true path of inner work. You are not meant to overpower your shadow, nor outrun it. You are meant to see it, to welcome it as part of your becoming. So pause before you force. Ask, what am I avoiding? What pain have I refused to grieve? What story have I not yet told myself the truth about? Because beneath every attempt to force something into being lies a wound begging not to be fixed, but to be felt. To stop forcing is not to give up. It is to begin the real work, the deep, slow, holy work of becoming whole. True growth is not a product you manufacture through discipline alone. It is a living emergence from within, unfolding like a mystery whose logic is not linear, but symbolic, unconscious, and rooted in necessity. The soul does not develop through rigid plans or flawless routines. It awakens when the inner and outer worlds align in meaning, when the unconscious begins to speak and is finally heard. To engineer growth as if you are building a machine is to misunderstand the very nature of the psyche. You are not a machine. You are a mystery moving through layers of depth that cannot be forced open, only received with reverence. The ego desires control, and it will try to mold the self according to external ideals, achievement, perfection, validation. It constructs identities like scaffolding, hoping that if it builds high enough or fast enough, the emptiness will disappear. But real transformation does not come from stacking accomplishments or performing wellness rituals. It emerges slowly, painfully, beautifully, often when the old scaffolding collapses and you are left face with something you cannot fix, only feel, something ancient, something raw, something real. True growth does not shout, it does not seek applause, it whispers in the dark moments, the in-between spaces where everything you thought you were no longer makes sense. It happens when you're brave enough to let something fall apart, when you no longer pretend to be who you are not. And in that unraveling, something new begins, not because you planned it, but because you stopped interfering with what your soul was trying to become. To grow is not to decorate the mask, it is to take it off. It is to stand without armor and let the rain touch your bare skin. The psyche does not evolve through domination, but through surrender, through encounters with grief, mystery, contradiction. You are not meant to manipulate your way into healing. You are meant to listen, to become porous, to allow what is unconscious to rise, even when it disrupts the identity you've worked so hard to maintain. When growth is emergent, it humbles you. It takes you deeper than your goals ever could. It connects you not to who you think you should be, but to who you truly are, beneath the conditioning, the masks, the compulsions to be seen a certain way. You cannot engineer that kind of becoming. You can only make yourself available to it. You can only say yes to the invitation when it arrives, often in the form of a crisis, a loss, a moment of unbearable stillness that reveals what you've always carried but never allowed yourself to feel. You are not here to conquer yourself. You are here to meet yourself, and what you will find is not a self that needs to be constructed, but one that is waiting to be uncovered. A self that was never lost, only buried. True growth is not something you chase. It is something that rises when you finally stop running. There is a strange intelligence in what resists you, an invisible guardian at the threshold of timing, asking not for your effort, but for your humility. When things refuse to move, when doors stay closed, when people walk away or opportunities vanish just as you reach for them, it's easy to fall into frustration, self-blame, or desperation. But beneath the surface of that resistance is often something sacred, protection. Not punishment, not rejection, protection. What resists you may be the soul's way of keeping you from a path that would fracture you before you are ready to hold it. You may believe you're prepared. You may feel certain that now is the time, that you've waited long enough, suffered long enough. But the deeper psyche sees what the conscious mind cannot. It knows where you are still fragile, where old wounds might reopen if you enter too soon. It knows when the structure of your inner life cannot yet sustain the weight of what you seek. The ego will protest this. It wants control, certainty, validation. It interprets blocked paths as failures, thinking, if only I tried harder, visualized more, prayed louder, achieved more. But the soul doesn't speak in force. It speaks in feeling, in silence, in symbols, and sometimes it speaks through the very resistance you're trying to overcome. It says, not yet. There is still something in you that must be tended to before you cross this threshold. That relationship that wouldn't open, perhaps it was mirroring a place inside you that was still closed. That dream job that slipped through your hands, perhaps it would have cemented an identity that was not aligned with your deeper truth. That success that evaded you no matter how hard you tried, perhaps it would have affirmed a persona you were meant to outgrow. Not every loss is a tragedy. Some are veils being lifted, some are mercies in disguise. When you force what resists, You often override this guidance. You bulldoze through warning signs and call it discipline. You call it persistence, but it is often just fear in disguise. A fear of waiting, of trusting, of surrendering to the pace of your own unfolding. There is wisdom in the block. There is timing in the delay. What resists you is not always working against you. Sometimes it is love appearing as limitation. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" begin to ask, "What is this slowing me down for? What in me is being shielded, softened, reshaped?" Because the moment you stop wrestling with resistance and begin listening to it, you shift from force to flow. From victimhood to stewardship, from impatience to presence. The soul is not in a rush. It is far more concerned with depth than speed, with wholeness than with achievement. So next time something resists you gently, firmly, persistently, don't push harder. Sit down beside it, listen, ask what it knows that you do not. You may find that what you thought was holding you back was actually holding you together. The soul does not move according to the ticking of the clock or the structure of your calendar. It is not concerned with deadlines, milestones, or productivity charts. It unfolds in patterns that are ancient, fluid, and often irrational to the logical mind. The deeper psyche speaks in symbols, not in schedules. Through dreams, synchronicities, intuitive nudges, bodily sensations, and the quiet language of inner resonance. When you try to chart your path solely through planning and force, you silence the very intelligence that is meant to guide you. You might believe you are late, that you should have accomplished more by now, that certain things should already be in place, but that belief is rooted in external comparison, not internal truth. The soul is not behind. It is simply not operating on the time axis that your ego has learned to worship. It does not grow under pressure, it grows through meaning. It moves when an inner symbol activates a shift, when a truth becomes undeniable, when a long, forgotten part of yourself comes to the surface and demands your presence. The modern mind, obsessed with efficiency and results, often misses these subtle but profound invitations. You may overlook a recurring dream, dismiss a sudden wave of sadness, or ignore a moment of deep resonance because it doesn't fit the plan. But these are the very threads the soul uses to weave a deeper narrative. To rush past them is to sever yourself from the guidance of the unconscious, and in doing so, you lose the thread of your own becoming. Growth that is true, growth that is yours, emerges not from executing a strategy, but from attuning to the symbolic movements of your inner life. A broken relationship may not be a failure but an initiation. A dream you had at age 9 may hold more truth about your calling than any adult career assessment. A casual conversation may stir something in you that no lecture or seminar ever could. These are the signs, the hints, the sacred fragments that don't obey the logic of time but carry the weight of eternity. This is why patience is not passive, it is devotional. It is the act of staying close to the symbolic, of refusing to rush the ripening of your inner truth. When you stop demanding that your life move on your schedule, you begin to notice the subtle orchestrations of the deeper self. You begin to see that nothing is random, that every delay, every detour, every wound was pointing you towards something essential, something only you could hear if you were quiet enough. To live in rhythm with the soul is to move by signs, not instructions. To wait for the symbol, not the green light. To trust that your unfolding may look nothing like what the world expects, and yet be exactly what is required for you to become whole. The real path doesn't appear until the psyche is ready to walk it, not when the calendar says it's time. And when it does, it won't shout, it will whisper, it will appear not as a clear path, but as a feeling, a pattern, a dream, a knowing. Honor those symbols. They are the soul's way of telling you where to go next. Not faster, not according to plan, but deeper, always deeper.